next topic that we want to talk about, which is a favorite of ours at the Forbidden Dinner Table, which is VR. And Evan, you're the only one here, I believe, that owns a VR headset.
Yes, I do. I have an Oculus Quest 2 or Meta Quest 2, whatever the heck they choose to call it.
So I guess maybe if you could just sort of go over, like, what's your relationship with it? Is it positive? Is it negative? What are some good things about it? What are some concerns maybe that you have?
How long can you play it without before getting motion sick?
Good question.
That's a good question. So I'll give you a little background on the only reason I have it. The only reason I have it was because I couldn't get a PS5. So I couldn't find a PS5. I couldn't buy one. And I was bored with my PlayStation 4. So I bought an Oculus.
That's the most American thing I've heard all week.
It is.
I was bored with my toy, so I bought a different toy.
I kind of part of me wants one. I'm not here to like talk poorly about it. I'm genuinely curious.
No, I will say I love it. I was immediately impressed. It is one of those things you start using, specifically the Oculus or any of the high level VR things. VR headsets, you are like literally putting on the future, because like it's incredible, like absolutely incredible. Really a weird, it's very strange to put it on. And I always watched videos of people like falling over and stuff like that. And I never understood that. I'm like, oh my God, it's just a game. It's the same people that, like, in my eyes, it was the same people that like turn their controller when they're playing like a racing game, right? I was like, yeah, this is not going to happen to me. And it doesn't, but I can see why people do it, because it's crazy immersive.
So
crazy immersive.
That just, right. Okay. So that's just because all of a sudden the line between reality and the game is a lot thinner than you thought once you're in there? Like your mind can forget that this isn't the world that you actually exist in.
Yes, it's more interesting to like it's your line of sight. So it's not a head thing. Like you're not thinking like nowhere in my head am I ever thinking like this is real, right? It's not like, oh, that's not there. It's more that like you can't separate your vision from your brain. It's very difficult to do that. A good example is that there's a theater app on the Oculus where I can go and sit in a theater and watch a movie, right? And if I go and I sit in the theater and I watch a movie, my eyes can't necessarily tell the difference between the fact that I'm actually watching something that's super tiny, but it's huge. Like I can watch a big screen movie and it feels like I am in a theater watching a big screen movie.
Okay.
It's very difficult to explain, but like your field of view, right, is completely changed. So like in the future, I fully believe that we won't have any need to go to a theater. You just put on your VR headset and you just go watch it in the theater.
Interesting. Because
you're just there. I went in through a Tokyo nightclub, and that was weird because it's all real people. And there's a difference between 360 and 3D. 3D does feel real. Like I felt creepy going through that nightclub because it's real people and they're really there, and I can look all around me. I could tell if a guy's shoe was untied.
Wait. Okay, hold on. I want to make sure that I understand this, because you said one thing and now it's different in my head. It wasn't a nightclub full of other people wearing Oculus headsets.
No.
It was a real nightclub really happening. You were there virtually.
I was there virtually.
That's wild.
And somebody was holding like a video, like a 3D video camera.
Yep. Okay.
So it was very strange.
This is, by the way,
very strange.
Future of sports, I think, too, is like you can sit courtside.
Oh God, yeah.
And see the actual game, which I think is happening.
Yes. I think it's already a thing. Yeah. And it would be really awesome.
See, I think
now
that stuff would be cool. Personally,
it would be cool. It would be very cool. Now the headset is a little bit heavy, So like I can only wear it for like honestly like an hour and a half tops. Like maybe I could sit through a whole movie, but like eventually it would start to get uncomfortable on my face. The dizzy thing is interesting because that's a huge difference between the 360 and the 3D, which is strange. It's really hard to explain, but 3D objects I can feel like I could reach my hand out and touch. 360 is like everything's around me, but it's all flat.
Yeah, 360.
It's kind of like if you were.
I imagine it's like the Google Map feature where you're
kind of yes
pictures of the world, but you can spin around and see it all around you.
Correct, but they're 2D.
Yeah, okay.
Right, they're flat. The 360 stuff makes me dizzy like instantly. Like I did like a roller coaster ride or something, and like I took my glasses off right away because I was like, oh nope, I don't like that at all. There was a really, really cool one that I ended up sitting through, but it made me really sick, which was, I think, the newest Mission Impossible movie, Fallout. You could sit in the helicopter with Tom Cruise. And, like, it is nuts. Just to see Tom Cruise doing these, like, crazy things. Right? And it's really him. It's just you and Tom Cruise in the helicopter. There's no one else in there.
It's pretty cool.
It's so cool. But it was 360 and made me very sick.
Yeah, we did like a dinosaur ride in Mall of America where we put glasses on and we were like in a fake Jeep and they bounced it around and stuff. We all got sick.
Right.
Couldn't do it.
It was probably 360 to
Might have been. Actually, now the way you've described it, that's exactly what it was.
Yeah, they're just pictures, right? They're just pictures that you can look all around in. And then I did Skyrim VR, and there's two different functions. There's little joysticks on the controller, and like you can move around, kind of like floating. You can move around anywhere you want with like the left joystick, and then with the right joystick you can like jump to spots. So you can like point an arrow at a spot, and you would jump to that spot. If I move around as a floating head, I can get really dizzy.
Okay.
But if I jump and I move around and I can there's a sword on the ground and I can actually walk and go pick it up, that doesn't make me dizzy.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So it's something they have to work on. I think it's a known issue.
Matt is doing a ton of research onto it, I know, of how to make people not as sick.
Yeah. Because I don't see myself as somebody that would get sick from that kind of stuff, like motion sickness.
Yeah.
A funny example is the car rides up to the cabin that we all used to go through. I was usually the one only throwing up when everybody else started throwing up.
Yeah,
I was
right because I didn't really get motion sickness.
As somebody who did get motion sick a lot as a kid.
Oh, I know.
Yes, Evan, you had a first row seat to that. Luckily, I mean, I haven't had that in a very long time, mostly because I don't get sick at all driving, and I'm now driving. Yeah. I'm the one that's driving most of the time. But I did a rock climbing experience in the Oculus. It was really, really cool, but I got queasy doing it. And I'm not afraid of heights or anything, but I started getting that motion sickness as I was doing the rock climbing.
Yeah. Do you remember what game it was called? Was it called The Climb?
That sounds right. And you just see these two little hands like gloves and you're moving along. It was really cool. Yeah. And you have to like throw yourself and catch yourself on rocks. Really fascinating. Yeah, I think it was called The Climb. Yeah.
I have that game and it is super fun. And I really do think it's almost like the better games, I don't really find myself getting sick. And then it's kind of like the games that are not so great, like Skyrim VR, like that was obviously just a port onto a VR thing. Like that makes me sick because it just wasn't done well enough to like not make me sick. But I do highly recommend. I just got golf. Golf is super fun. And there's plenty of games that you could just be standing still and doing stuff, and it's still a blast.
They do. If they do VR support for the F1, I would have to try it.
Yeah, I don't know if they do currently.
But it's coming.
It's, at least for my Quest, it's a little clunky trying to get the computer port onto the Quest. The games I like playing are the ones that I just downloaded straight to the Quest, because then I don't have a cord.
Sure.
So I don't know. I would recommend. Otherwise, next time we're all together, I'll bring it and we can play it. But it's fun.
Let's talk life application outside of gaming, though, because I know like Meta's vision is that we're having conference calls and all this in VR. Could you see it being used for something like that, or is there just going to be too much pushback?
To be honest, I find it super unnecessary.
And I agree.
There's no, we already have Zoom calls. Like you're going to have the exact same issues you have with Zoom calls, right? Like Zoom calls, you have audio issues, you have video feed issues, you have
that's true
talking over talking issues, and you have like just straight internet connectivity issues, right? You're going to have all that stuff with VR headsets too. It's not going to change any of that.
Yeah, that's a good point. But what if, so I'm just kind of thinking, so I agree. Conference calls, it sounds unnecessary, but I could see somebody saying, like, if you work from home, all the work from home employees have to put some sort of headset on and like be in a virtual office where you can see each other, walk up to each other's desks, this type of thing. I could see that as an application. People might not like it at first.
I would think that would suck. Yeah, I was going to say, I think that would suck, to be honest. But
I could just imagine somebody like, forgets to change their settings, and this is like dinosaur and boxers walks up. Like, do you have those reports I need?
You're going to run into those types of problems. Like there was a famous one where some professor or something was a potato on a conference call.
Oh, potato, yeah.
There's certainly going to be those problems. A real life example that I actually see this type of technology for would be like, I'm working from home, but I'm operating a forklift in a warehouse.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me.
That does make sense to me. I was going to say, in manufacturing, I think it is a good application. We had, so during COVID, we kind of like threw out, it was more or less just a FaceTime app, but you could draw on it. So what I was doing, I was only home for like 2 days. So we only did it like 2 days. But what I was doing was training people. And like, if you imagine like training somebody without being there and like just trying to tell them over the phone is like virtually impossible, right? It's very, very difficult to be like, oh, grab the wrench and turn it a quarter in, like, what was cool is that I could see what they're doing. And I could say, don't grab that, grab this.
That is pretty cool.
And then I could actually like draw on the app. I could draw like, oh, here's a big red circle on what you're supposed to look at.
You were doing John Madden play-by-play?
Yeah, it was just a play-by-play. Like, oh, hey, do this, do that. Grab this, grab that. So I could see, the VR headsets really have an effect there where like I don't have to be there.
Yeah.
I could be at home and I could show you how to grab everything, but it also requires somebody to be there. Right. But
that's true.
The forklift really doesn't, right? You could operate that forklift. Now
you can dig holes on the side of the road from my house easily.
Yeah. Yeah. But I don't necessarily think you need VR headsets to do that. I mean, you need any sort of. I could do that stuff from my home right now with a programmable logic controller. I could do the same thing. I could set that all up to just go and do something and import it without even going there at all.
Yeah. The question is, where does the VR give edge over a portable controller? Because your answer of it just having a controller would be the same for like military UAV. But I know Microsoft has a huge contract with the United States Defense Department.
They use Xbox controllers. Did you know that? The military does.
Yeah, I do know that, but they're getting into using like these Halo lenses and these VR capabilities with military.
Yeah. The only thing I see like with the forklift, it's so much easier if you could look around and see what you're doing. When you go to back up, you turn around, look, or like for training, especially. So what you brought up is good in a training example, but think of like surgeon learning how to perform surgery, put a VR thing on and go virtually do surgery. You're learning all the correct movements without actually operating on somebody.
So here's where I think you're going to run into issues. And this is something with like this big uptick on automation. Everybody's very heavy on automation. I find that even the automation has so many flaws in it that you end up spending all your time on maintenance, right? So like I'm on a VR headset, right? And it's not working properly. Who do I call? Somebody still has to come and like fix my Oculus headset because I can't operate this forklift because it's not working, right? Or lightning struck and my internet's down and I can't connect to my forklift. I can't even go to work, right? So those are all like these unforeseen things.
Someone will always have to be there.
Yeah, somebody's always going to have to be there, and somebody's always going to have to at least repair these things.
You're cutting the required
there's going to be maintenance. There's going to be maintenance on all this stuff.
We can play the story though of like, oh, what if something goes wrong with your car? This is why horses are more reliable to get to your.
That's true. Good point.
This story has been played over.
It's true.
Yeah.
What about?
Yeah, I actually think it would be a good thing, right? My main thing is just safety, right? If you don't have somebody in that forklift, there's no safety, right? Like there's nobody around.
Yeah.
Because everybody's at home, sitting in their home, operating the forklift, right? So there's no danger for them. I think that's huge. That's massive.
You set your VR headset down and somebody's actually in the warehouse. And they see this forklift spinning, knocking things over.
Good question. Something certainly that will have to be ironed out. Yeah. Safety rule. I mean, OSHA's going to have to figure all that out. What about?
I think we're very far away from that.
I think so too. But
I think we're very far away from that.
Yeah. In a everyday
and also people buying like $400 to $500 VR headsets to do these things, and then someone has to come up with the software to be able to run these things. And I think we're very far away, and I don't know if the benefit is really there.
When you say very far away, do you mean in your lifetime? Do you mean out past your lifetime?
I'd say 20 years.
Okay. I was going to say probably our lifetime. This will start popping up, but having you brought up your point, there needs to be a benefit. So the price has to come down. There has to be an obvious cost savings, right? By the way, you could say the same thing about like the self-checkout lines, which sometimes break and someone's got to be there to fix it. Yeah, but we've hit a point now where they seem to be cheaper, and at least cheaper long-term, than hiring more people. Whereas when they first came out, that was probably not the case. So these things do hit tipping points.
I agree. And I do think the benefit is there. I just don't know if it's enough. Maybe it is enough.
What about a middle ground where it's not necessarily a full-blown headset? Let's say it's a pair of glasses you can put on. So this would be more like augmented reality, I think, where you're walking down the street with these glasses and like look at a store and their Yelp reviews will pop up or something like that. So this is like a middle step.
Yeah.
Is that?
Love it.
Okay. So you'd be pro this type of technology?
I'm pro VR too.
Right.
I'm a little personal to that because I spent a lot of my time like fixing robots and it was very frustrating. So maybe I'm a little biased on that, but no, I think the augmented thing is really cool, and I'm totally.
I think it's cool, but I have some problems depending on where it goes. So it would be certainly really cool to like look at a restaurant and their menu pops up in your your vision or something like that.
Yeah.
That sounds cool. What sounds scary to me would be like if I can look at you, your most recent tweets pop up or something like that. Or I look at you and it tells me which political party you're affiliated with. Now I'm starting to have problems with this. And I think it's going to do more harm than good.
Zach, what do you think?
Well, what I'm thinking about is, do we reach a point where it's very tough to go through society without those glasses? And what I was mentally thinking through is like, have we reached that point with phones where the expectation is like, look, I'm not going to give you explicit directions. I'm just going to tell you the address and you have to figure it out on Google Maps. Or like, I mean, when I was on the West Coast, I remember places you had to flag somebody down to get an actual menu because everything was just like scan the QR code.
It's here too. Yeah, we did. There are no menus. This is still true of a lot of places. They just have a QR code.
Yeah, that's more of a COVID thing though.
But to Zach's point, it's impossible to navigate life without a phone at this point.
Right.
And so my question is, do we reach a point where it gets to that way with like AR glasses?
Well, I've described it as a luxury. We'd have to sit and think about the next step to where you would need them. Because to me, it's like an extension of your phone. It's really what they are. I can sit and Google the menu or they can just pop up.
Yeah.
So it's more like a luxury. However, I still have problems if I can look at you and it knows somehow, I guess, who you voted for or something like that. I don't know. Those are just examples.
See, where I would love the glasses is, again, this is specific to manufacturing, but we have certain programs that you can set up, and they're very, very complicated, very expensive. That like, let's say you were building something, right? Let's say you were building a wooden horse, right? And you grabbed the wrong tool. It would tell you grabbed the wrong tool.
That would be cool.
So a red light flashes and just says, "Hey, you don't need a hammer. You need a screwdriver."
That would be cool.
Oh, okay. And then it doesn't go green until you grab the screwdriver. The glasses could do the same thing, right? Like the glasses could say, "Hey, like you just stripped that screw. You got to pull it out." Yeah, right. Well, right though. So like,
nope,
I don't know.
Try again. No,
nope. I think that would be amazing. I mean, we would reduce, but at the same point, like, when do you just have a robot do it?
Yeah. That's the thing I'm thinking too. Is this like idea of when you were talking about the VR driving the forklift? I was like, yeah, but are we going to be on an acceleration curve where people think like, do we even invest in that, or do I just wait for the next thing? That's
a good question.
There's already robots that do that stuff. There's already robots that do forklifts. So like, and they do it with sensors and they do it with all kinds of stuff that like break and don't work properly all the time, right? But to your point, like, yeah, I'm the maintenance guy that goes and fixes it, but like they only have to pay me. They don't have to pay like.
And I'm the only one that has to be here.
Forklift drivers. I'm the only one that has to be here.
I was just another cool example I thought of when
sucks.
You brought up machinery. With the augmented reality, imagine popping the hood on your car and it just says like, this is the filter, this is the dipstick, this is the thing. You're just like, oh, great. Can't screw this up. That would be cool.
I had something you brought up, Alex. But listening to your previous podcast, it was a thought that I had.
Hit us with a callback.
It was mostly like, yeah, well, I don't know what you guys are talking about. But I remember thinking like, man, it's so interesting how like literally the demand for whatever you're going to make has to be just such an extreme amount, right? Like I feel like not that long ago, maybe 40 or 50 years, you could make a product and you didn't have to sell to the entire world. You just had to sell to like the people in your general neighborhood and you could make a living, right? And it's not really like that anymore. You really have to make something that is so big that you make tons and tons of money, otherwise you won't be able to sustain it.
The barrier to entry of business is high. That's what you're saying.
But what just popped into my head, have either of you two seen The Founder, the movie about the McDonald's?
Yeah, about McDonald's.
So what just popped into my head is that guy initially in the beginning of the movie driving around and selling like shake machines. local restaurants. And that was his whole job. That was his whole gig. Now, if you make a shake machine, it's got to be better than every other one out there. Which is
otherwise, why would I replace it?
Yeah. Your reach has to be much larger. And wow.
You should have been selling ice cream machines to make money so they didn't break.
So the Alex, I think we might have even talked about this before, but Zach, the thing I brought up was that when I was young, I thought, well, this goes kind of back to the cooking thing. Like, I didn't really think that I would really need to know how to cook. That sounds stupid, but like, I didn't think I would, something will cook for me. And it somewhat does, right? My Instant Pot pretty much does it for me, right? But like on a lot of levels, I just didn't think I would still have to do that. Like, oh, technology will advance so far that I won't have to cook. I won't have to do dishes. I won't have to do laundry. I won't have to do any of that stuff because technology will push it far enough for me not to have to do any of those things.
Are you sure you weren't just thinking, I don't have to cook because a woman will do that for me?
No, of course not. Of course not.
I think I can imagine just you watching Spy Kids as a child and being like, "That's what I want. That little packet I can put in the microwave and all this."
Like a burger pops out.
Well, kind of, right?
Yeah,
like a pill, right? You put a pill in there, and then you just got a full cooked steak meal, right? And I don't know if that was like our generation of like the way we thought technology was going to progress, but like it's funny the stops we make, right? Like nobody's making a good washer and dryer anymore because washer and dryers isn't really the greatest business ever, right? Like it's not the most lucrative. Like you don't see companies like, oh, all we make is washer and dryers. No, the people that make washer and dryers make all appliances or do drastically other things, right? And their margins of profit on those things are probably very small. And essentially my point is that like it's kind of sad that all we get is technology that we can only spend money on. It's not advancing technology to advance technology. It's advancing technology so that someone somewhere can make money off of it.
I was gonna say the only reason that they make washer and dryers is so that you remember their name next time you need a fridge.
100%. GE got bought out, and they're a Chinese company, but there's still GE names on everything, right?
Just funny because I have all GE appliances, which came with the house.
Right. Yeah, and like the Chinese corporation that bought the GE appliances bought them because it was a good name, right? And GE wanted to keep the name because they get credit for all of those things that they don't even make anymore.
The Callahan Auto, they just want the name.
They just want the name. That's exactly right. Tommy Boy, like he just wants to. Like I don't really care about your brake pads. You could put anything in that box. I just want the Callahan name. And it's sad, and I really wish our technology wasn't pushed forward by those things. It probably always has, right? It definitely always has. But think what we could do in our world if that wasn't the only driving force to create them.
Reminds me a little bit. It's not directly mapped onto, but it's a little bit adjacent to. I have a friend of mine who is like a tried and true socialist and like is a full believer in socialism and super smart, well-spoken individual. And so I love going out for beers with them and just talking through like, okay, well, what about this? Well, how do we solve this? And he's brought up a really good point in the past when I'm just kind of arguing on the behalf of capitalism and being like, yeah, but it gives you choices and all this sort of stuff. And he's brought up like, the choices to do what? When you're super broke, like, yeah, you can choose what fast food joint you want to eat at, but that's like an illusion of choice. Yeah. Like, it was a kind of an interesting wake up call or perspective to take. I'll just say of like, okay, like, yeah, there's all these choices, but is there really choice there? And like, what's your relationship to that choice? And also under the concept of relationship to choice, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the studies of like, if a store carries 3 brands of jeans versus 50 brands of jeans, consumers are usually happier when there's only 3 brands because the opportunity cost is lower. Of like, if I buy 1, I miss out on the 2. But if I buy 1, I miss out on the 49. I have to like crunch all of these mental, I've
seen this study done with ice cream flavors.
Yeah. So I know that's not exactly what you're saying, Evan, but this idea of technology and the idea of choice and this relationship to like the options that we have and barriers of entry for more different creative ideas to come in all mixes together in this sort of pot in my mind of these different threads of things that we can choose to buy or companies that exist.
This is an example of something that proponents of universal basic income talk about. If you had a little extra money, you wouldn't maybe need to work those extra hours. Or your choices open up because you might have more free time, or maybe you go find a job that doesn't necessarily pay well, but it's something you want to do, or you can take your free time and instead of driving for Uber, you can, I don't know, make art or play music or something. Choices start to open up when you take the money and the business out of it. So that's kind of both had those similar thoughts then, Zach, you and I, based on what Evan said, which is cool.
I have one kind of like issue with that, and that's just motivation.
Is it an issue with UBI or what is particularly are you addressing with that comment?
Particularly with like universal basic income, or like if everybody gets paid the same, what's my motivation to do a better job than anybody else?
I didn't say that, so I just want to be clear. This would be like Andrew Yang's everybody gets an extra $1,000 a month of a situation.
You have a floor. You have $1,000 a month.
Oh, I see.
It's not the same.
Yeah.
So, okay. So that important distinction, though. I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yes. Yeah, it is. That's different.
I would certainly wouldn't leave my job. If that was passed tomorrow, I wouldn't change anything about my career, which I guess, maybe speaks to my current privilege or whatever you want to call it. But a lot of people might, or I might go, I'll take more vacations or something like that, right? I have a little extra cash or something like, so it just affect all of our choices and that was more my point.
I think the funny thing is when the government has done this in the past, right, and they've just kind of given out money, usually the idea is to, well, at least besides COVID, right, the idea was that, hey, it's going to help our economy, right, because they're gonna go and spend that money, and what do people do with it? Well, they just save it.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay, well, this didn't help us at all.
Pay off bills or
pay off bills and pay off.
In COVID time, invest it, which you can argue that stimulates something. But
I know there was one economic study done that they were assessing when people got tax refunds, where was there a spike in the economy, right? To be like, okay, if we gave people this, they get their disposable income with a tax refund. I don't remember all of the categories, but one of the top ones was medical expenses. Mm-hmm. So it's this idea that poor people are withholding care due to lack of
doesn't surprise
me, which is really, really sad.
I do. I withhold care. I would go to the doctor a lot more if it didn't cost as much. And I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of times where I didn't need to go to the doctor and I should have, but there's also plenty of times where I didn't need to go and I didn't go, right? And do we want people in there all the time that don't need to be there? Right. Or do we want people in there when they need people? I am all in on, hey, you should go. You should always get care, right? But that's the problem that awakens. Right?
Certainly.
You have people going, oh, I got a stuffy nose. Yeah. And it's like, well, yeah.
Taking someone's spot now.
It's winter. Yeah. You're going to have you just took somebody's spot. They're taking care of you, and the 2 people behind you just died because they couldn't get in because you were taking their spot, right? Which is the biggest complaint against universal healthcare too, right? If the lines are so long, they can't get in there.
Totally.
So how do you prioritize people correctly?
Start to triage, but then you end up with what Canada has, where they say come back in a couple months, and you're like, okay, well, I need now, but
yeah, I'll be fine in 4 months probably, or I'll be dead.
I've heard the horror stories of like, my arm is broken. Okay, well, here's some pain medication, and then in 4 months, see where you're at, and if we have to re-break it, we'll do that. And like, okay.
I have an interesting question.
Please.
It's something I used to think about all the time, because for most, I wouldn't say most, for a lot of the existence of mankind, currency or some form of currency has always been there, right? Whether it's trading or gold, right? Yeah. So, do you think that mankind could ever advance past that?
Well, so, okay, my immediate answer here without taking too much time is no, but the medium of exchange may continue to grow and evolve.
Sure.
But otherwise, no.
Yeah, but you're not, the medium of exchange might change, right? Like it might change into like, credits.
Yeah.
Right? You just have credits and nobody has physical money anymore, right? That's fine.
Right?
But it's still the same concept.
Yeah, I mean, we've gone from gold to dollars to who knows what's next. But
we haven't really progressed in that way, hardly at all.
Well, right? We use now. I mean, we got off the gold standard, and then most of our money is digital. So I think there has been some notches, but it hasn't been. If you compare that to like the invention of credit, right? That is a huge leap.
I can't see a world that exists without a medium of exchange.
A placeholder, yes, that's what I'm kind of thinking too.
Because otherwise, I mean, you'd have to be way
a barter system then.
Yeah, but what if I don't want what you have, or like, what is my place of employment giving me then?
Yeah. But what if robots were doing everything that we would do as jobs? So, robots are doing all.
but here's the thing. Well, okay, so you'd have to change society greatly if you want that to be true, because if robots were doing everything, I still want to. Let me try and think of a good example.
You still want to work?
That's not what I was going to say. I was just
humans are still going to.
Okay, hold on, real quick. I want to go to a football game and not a dance recital, so I'm making a choice. A lot of other people probably also want to go to the football game. So, like, how do I go to the football game? No money. And the answer can't be, well, everyone can just go. Mandated. Well, no, because there's only so many seats.
Sure. I mean, other podcasts I've listened to, when they talk about if you solve this utopia and we get to the point where robots are doing all of the manual labor or work, humans are competitive in nature. They're still going to compete for status or
fame. Fame gets me into the football game. Money doesn't.
That's the motivation, right? The motivation there is to be better than other people. Yeah. It sounds awful, but that's really what it is.
Yeah. I mean, it's why influencers and TikTok and all this sort of stuff it excels, is because of the desire and these networks that are fame sort of based.
Actually, I'm glad you brought that up, Zach. So let me rephrase that, because I think it can be said even better. Even if money was gone, we would find something else to compete over that we would now find valuable. For example, fame, which almost puts money right back into the equation.
Well,
it's the same concept.
I was trying to think of how to very creatively and sci-fi wise just explore this kind of question of like, could we almost trade in like emotions? Like, would we ever get to a point where like you're trading straight dopamine for things?
There's a book kind of about that. It's called Feed.
I've never heard of it.
It's where everybody's part computer, and they find drug in viruses. So like but now they don't have human emotion. Right? So it's all about this teenager's journey with viruses and finding like love and like rediscovering love. Nobody has it anymore. It's very interesting book.
It reminds me a little bit of
fun to read.
Equilibrium.
I was thinking that too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very good.
Kids,
but I don't. Yeah, I mean, the teenagers, right? I don't necessarily think that like we ever fully get to that point, though.
I agree. There's going to be some type of medium of exchange. So looking at the time here, I have two questions.
I was going to say we're starting to get a bit, starting to get a bit along. So Zach, why don't you take it away?
Okay, cool. So Evan, my one question to you, and a little bit of just a table setter kind of platform for you is, it's my understanding that you have your own podcast. So would love to know what that's about and, you know, sort of what your own journey to podcasting has been. And now that you've seen how Alex and I do things a little bit kind of behind the curtain, curious how you prepare for your podcast, as well as if you could just talk a little bit about what your podcast covers and all those sort of things. I'd love to hear it.
Sure. I actually just started listening to podcasts, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 years ago. Kind of fell in love with them. It's more relaxing for me to listen, especially in the car. And my friend Ben Berling said, "Hey, we should do a little podcast." So we started a podcast called Talk of the Draft, and the concept is kind of funny. Basically, we do drafts like a football draft, where everybody takes turns drafting their thing, but the topics are interesting. Like the topics are like, one was a comedy movies, so you would draft a main character in your comedy movie, you would draft a secondary character, and then comedic relief character, and then you would draft a story or something like that. And everybody drafts differently, and the viewer doesn't know necessarily like, well, I guess they would know who drafted who if you listen to the podcast. But what we do is we do this draft, and we have teams, but the teams have no names. And then we send them out to people and just say, hey, vote for your favorite team. And then the winner just gets kind of pride that they picked the best team.
Right.
So we've done topics like different, if all of the political people were wiped off the face of the earth, who would you pick who's not in politics anymore to start running our country? So that was fun. We just picked, mostly famous people to like replace, like, oh, this would be president, right? Beyonce is going to be president now, like something like that, right? So it's fun. We started doing that through COVID, just as something to kind of have fun with. And I really prepare. Like we come up with a topic, we workshop ideas, and we all agree on one topic, and then we start kind of doing our leaderboard drafts, and then we do the podcast. And you never really know what other people are going to draft. Some answers are like super obvious, right? We had one where like if you could like punch one person in history, like who would it be? Like, okay, Adolf Hitler was always going to be the number one on the list, right? So you kind of know, but then we do order in the draft. So we do a wheel, and whoever gets to go first, they get the first pick, and then we do a snake draft from there. So it's fun. We have a good time. It's on Spotify if you guys want to take a listen. Much less, I would say, professional than this one. We kind of just talk, so I wouldn't expect anything super professional.
This one, can
I submit a question? Oh,
yeah.
Sorry, you go ahead.
I was just saying I've listened to a few. It is very fun, and I can vouch.
I'm definitely going to check it out. Can I submit a question for consideration for one of the drafts?
Yes.
If there was a venue that was unlimited seats and tickets were just $10, right, for your spot on the lawn, and it was, again, you could fit as many people into it as you wanted in, what would be your top artist billing to put as many people onto that lawn?
That's a really good one. We did fictional concerts that you would want to go to. I think it was fictional concerts. So it was like something that happened, or fictional events. So like one fictional event would be like Quidditch World Cup.
Oh.
right? For Harry Potter, like you could pick anything. Couldn't be anything real. It had to be fictional, and you could pick to go to it, right? So that was kind of fun.
All I'm thinking about is that sport they play in Batman Beyond in the zero gravity chamber, where they're like,
I
was thinking basketball. See the beers.
Basketball would be great, right? Like all fictional things that we wanted to do. That one was fun. And I think the next one, I voted for smells. So like you're gonna do a draft of like your favorite smells. So, but I will put that one in the loop, Zach. That's a good one.
It sounds very creative. I like it.
It's fun. Yeah, we have a good time with it.
Well.
Okay. Well, one last question here, I think, that will take us home, and it's it's just something that I like to ask older people, younger people, any of them. I think this question tells a good sort of little reflection of your life, both when you were younger and where you're at now. Here's my final question to you, Evan. If you could give a piece of advice to yourself at 18 and at 25, what would they be?
Good question. It's a hard question to answer. I'd probably just tell myself to let it go.
Take a page out of Frozen.
Yeah.
Does make sense.
Yeah.
There's so many big things that seem so big, and then you realize they're not.
Yeah. Just like, oh my gosh, just let it go. I mentioned earlier in the podcast, like how angry I would get with like the news and like how awful our world is and all this stuff. And it's just like, gosh, just let it go, man. Live your life and things will work out.
I think it's great advice.
Agreed.
Take it, use
it. It's easy to do that now.
Well, yeah.
Where I'm at, right? It's harder to be in that situation and, going to college and not really knowing your future in life.
Imagine.
Right?
Well, and I think though, it's great context when things are stressing you out now. You can think about what Evan at 40 would say to you now, which is let it go.
The words out of my mouth, Zach. I was going to say, imagine what you're going to tell yourself or wished that you had known when you were in your 30s. And so it only keeps going. All right.
Yeah. Oh, good point.
Thanks for joining us. This has been a fun one.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. I know we went long. That's probably my fault. So, but
I think it's going to be a trend with guests, especially guests that we know very well, because we want to just chat and talk about things.
Yeah.
3 guys talking about Spy Kids.
I think you found the name of this episode, Spy Kids.
Just talking about Spy Kids. As Zach said, take it, use it, live. So with that, thank you for listening, and everybody have a good evening.
Thanks.